Hi, I'm Rana Dubrow. I am the CURT Director of Membership, and I want to welcome all of you to the CURT event, How Connected Data Strengthens the Owner-Contractor Partnership. Our thanks to Innate for coordinating and sponsoring today's panel discussion. Be sure to check out curtevents.com for our November summits and our February conference agendas. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Rick Deans with Innate.
Thank you, Rona. It's great to be here, and we appreciate everybody taking time out of their busy day to join us. Before we get rolling, I'd like to introduce our two panelists, or better yet, have them introduce themselves. And maybe Kim, we'll start with you. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and your role and the organization that you're with?
Sure, thanks, Rick, and hello, everyone. My name is Kim Arent, and I am currently the Vice President of Business Transformation at Aptum. In that role, I lead a group of technology professionals referred to as the Client Technology and Innovation Team. And our mission as a team is to bring technology to our projects and just overall to our business. Most currently, I've had the opportunity to work with our Vice President of IT, Jason Berg, to develop an Aptum overall technology roadmap. So we're developing that roadmap, implementing it currently now. So it's really exciting times for Aptum in that range. And then also, it's, as you can tell, connected data is a very important part of that initiative.
That's great, Kim. Thank you. And Mike, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the organization you work for and maybe some of the initiatives you've been part of over the years.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you're calling in from. Mike Albany is my name, Vice President of Estimating at AECON. I'm in the Civil East group in that business. AECON's a Canadian company. We're the largest publicly traded infrastructure company in Canada. And overall, the company is involved in everything from civil work, buildings, utilities, gas, nuclear, fiber optic, kind of you name it, dams, kind of the whole kit and caboodle of what you normally would see in the civil business. Our projects range in size. We do a lot of self-perform work, and we do project management work as well. But on the civil side, our projects kind of range from, you know, the under $1 million to the multi-billion-dollar size. So we work on a lot of those projects, the larger ones, with joint venture partners to get them done. And the durations are kind of up to about 5, 6, 7 years altogether with those. And, you know, in recent times for us, this webinar is kind of timing, the timing fits. We've looked at IDD several times over the years. We've had people in charge of IDD and to bring it throughout the company. It's been a tough challenge, for example. For those that use the BIM terms, it's BIM or IDD, I guess. But the most recent effort we've had over the last couple of years has had a lot more traction. We've gotten more buy-in. Sharing of data between the teams has been more widespread, I guess. We're still in the early phases of it, but we're doing pretty well for where we are with the teams and getting the training up and going so far.
Well, that's great, Mike and Kim. Thanks for joining us again. My name is Rick Deans. I'm with Innate, and we build and maintain a project controls platform that's been used throughout the industry by owners, engineers, and contractors. Full disclosure, both Mike and Kim are with customer organizations of ours. And we're excited to talk a little bit today about connected data and ways in which owners and contractors can share data. We thought it would be interesting to start off with a poll. So I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll, and you should see it coming up on your screens. And really, we're just trying to get a feel for the audience. Are most of you part of the owner community? Do we have any contractors in the audience? We've also got a slot in there for engineering firms, as well as owners, reps, and construction managers. And we'll wait for these poll numbers to to come in, and while those poll numbers are sort of settling in, maybe we'll set the stage a little bit. I've been in this industry. I used to round up to 20 years. Now I round down to 20 years. And one of the things that I've noticed, especially dealing with contractors, owners, and engineers, traditionally there has been sort of an us versus them mentality. You know, and some of the challenges about getting on the same page include co-location of resources. Maybe the owner's team isn't as involved in the project on site as the contractor's team. Maybe that's vice versa. Maybe there are differences at which levels data is recorded and reported on as projects are being executed. And certainly, you know, the realm of the one-off Excel spreadsheet or the one-off system that doesn't really tie into anything else. And we really wanted to talk about that as well. And, you know, maybe we'll start with you, Kim. Maybe you can share some experiences or give some insight on how to leverage data and analytics to really increase transparency and to maybe better the outcomes of some of these capital projects.
Well, thanks. Yeah, Rick. You know, as I mentioned, our roadmap, and at the center of that roadmap is just what you mentioned there, is our ability to be transparent with our performance and our activities with our customers and our clients, as we see that more and more and that request more and more. And to be honest with you, we expect that, and today feel like that is and can be a differentiator for us, although we know with time and very quickly that that's changing because everybody and every owner is getting on board with that. Digital transformation is enabling that, right? And so as part of our roadmap, we're very focused on the front end of collecting data at the point and the source of where it is generated. So we're enabling that end user, the person that's doing the work, the person that's executing and trying to make them successful. And then along those lines, we're pulling all those data together, which Innate helps us do that, right? To connect them, because what are we really focusing on these days? We're focusing on collaboration. We're focusing on pre-planning. We're focusing on all those things that require us to tear down and bring down those walls or those silos, both in terms of performance and then also with regard to data. And so our roadmap puts a heavy emphasis on the development of what we call our data pipeline, and then thus access to, whether it's from field to office or from office to our client, is to provide that transparency as we are working and as we are executing.
You know, and that's excellent, Kim. And you bring up a really good point, and that is to emphasize the data is collected at the source, right? And then that data can sort of feed through the entire life cycle of the project without someone having to take that data, reformat it, and enter it into a different application or a different system altogether. Mike, from your experience, how are you guys capturing and connecting and organizing data today to not only provide transparency and strengthen collaboration, but specifically to allow the owners, your clients, to see how projects are progressing?
The owners are maybe a little bit different in Canada with the specifications they require, but probably the most stringent ones we see from the owners, they require basically a handover document that's loaded with all kinds of attributes of the entire project. And, you know, in those types of cases, pretty much the only way you can do it is digitally. Forget about all the, you know, the 3-ring binders and that type of thing, but everything would be linked directly into the plans and the models of the project. You know, to expand a little bit on Kim's comments, we're attacking it the same way at our business. But some of the challenges that we have are around the standards, right? We're a little bit early on this in Canada, we find, in the marketplace, and we're kind of creating the standards as we go and driving that back, but to the design firms. But it's very important that it does originate with the design firms. They have to own this and bring it forward, and then we can share the data from that point into all the groups.
Great. Kim, what are some of the challenges that you've faced getting to where you are today? and how did you, or how are you continuing to overcome them as they continue to arise, undoubtedly?
Yeah, well, you know, Mike brought up very good point, and that's around standardization and the standardization understanding of how you work from beginning to end. So whether it's within your own scope of that confined, like specific project, whether it's just construction or whether it's end-to-end EPC, is understanding that we have those standards. And to be honest with you, that's one of the things that owners can help us with, is to establish and recognize and follow as many of those standards as we can, because in what we do, those are our friend, right? Consistency in practice and consistency in data allow us to successfully connect those data, so we don't have a lot of disparate just data that's hanging out there. So, you know, consistency in operations and consistency in data is key. Another thing was around, you know, of course, change management. We all know that. We've all felt those pains and those growing pains. But I will tell you guys, like, focusing on the end user, focusing on their success has been a major success factor for us. Also addressing that, what we call that, the frozen middle, very affectionately, the people that have done what they do now for so many years that they struggle to see beyond their standard practice. But I can tell you guys too, is you know, the spirit of this conversation that we're having today, one of the things that I hear a lot when I ask questions around, you know, new ideas and new technology and implementations of new innovation, is they'll say, well, Kim, but our clients aren't asking for us, aren't asking that of us. They're not asking for that. Why would I do that? Why do I want to like learn that? Why do I want, when it's not what they're asking for? I beg you guys, ask for it. You know, so that'll help us over some of those change management humps if the business understands and knows that that's what you're looking for, besides the fact that it's our job as consultants to offer you a best practice and a best option. And I get that. And we will continue to focus on that for sure. Another challenge that we have and have had in this, and are trying to move that even in our own organization, quite frankly, is making technology and making data and the discussion around information and the availability of information a day one discussion. Okay, it's not something that you can talk about like when the need just happens to come up. And I'm not saying that we can't be flexible and we won't be scalable and we're not working toward that kind of flexibility, but to get a true success around our ability to share and make data transparent and put the right numbers and put accurate numbers on a dashboard is around understanding and making sure that our procedures in the field and everything that we're doing are collecting the right data, and that we understand those end game expectations, all the way to close out and turnover, as Mike referred to, around, you know, around what is the expectation there. So we need to make sure that data is, and even our IT support is not something that happens after the fact or 2 days before we mob into the field. We need to make sure that those conversations are part of our planning and are just as important as our project management, to be honest with you.
And you bring up some great points there, Kim. And I guess, you know, depending on the contract type, you know, that might dictate how much information we're comfortable sharing. But maybe, Kim, do you think there are any implications or challenges to sharing too much data? What's the key? Where's the sweet spot with that?
Well, I think it goes back to that conversation and that early conversation, I hope, around expectations. And, you know, our systems are a beautiful thing now is our data structures and our systems are so much, you know, technology enabled around security and around access and being able to compartmentalize and structure our data in a way that we can say, okay, this is data that we're not ready to share, and this is data that we are ready to share. Another thing that's really important to think about is the fact that what we're doing is we're all looking pretty much at the same data. We're just looking at it through different windows.
Mm-hmm.
So whether I am looking at you know, data from the standpoint of managing day-to-day tasks, which my client is not, I don't think, was interested in, I'm still looking at that same, and I could take that same piece of data, even if it's time data that I use to pay someone, from a payroll perspective, I can take that same piece of data and I can package it with a quantity, and I can create a productivity measure that my client would be interested in. But you're right, it is all very dependent on the type of contract that you're entering into. And so I go back to, it needs to be a day one conversation and management of expectations.
That's great. Mike, maybe you can share a partnering experience with us. I'll give you your choice. Maybe an example of where everything went well and you had a really positive experience, or maybe you want to touch on something that wasn't, a red letter day.
Okay. I'll go in the middle, I guess. I'll find one with the beach, maybe. I think probably one of the best experience we had as a design build was very early when they were first kind of out on the market, and this is going back 20 plus years ago now. But where the unique things of it versus today was the owner was more involved in the project. Not to slight, I'm not saying the engineering firms of the world, that's fine, okay, but we had more knowledgeable owners that were skilled in construction. They could walk on a job, understand what was going on. They could ask, questions about the work activities that were taking place. We generally don't see that anymore. So what we have is the third party, is the engineering firm, is the representative of our client, and they're the ones taking that role. So when we talk about changes on the job, there's always three sets of eyes you got to go through to convince things, but the consultant usually is the one talking to the main client, and that can get difficult because if we all pass the message around 10 chairs in a circle, we know what the message is going to be like at the 10th chair. So when we're talking about data and factual data and models and things like that, I think that the conversation can become easier because we're talking about facts, changes, as those modeling type information is linked to schedules and costs. I think it should be easier for the owners to more buy in or identify that, yes, there is a problem here and we need to resolve it, versus being kind of at each other in meetings for months or years afterwards in the claims process. So I think, owners, when they were more involved, it was easier, but they have a hard time getting staff nowadays. That's why they do these design build type projects in general. It's one element why. And the other things that the owner tends to agree on, where there can be fault, we've had it's to do with risk sharing. So when we sign up for contracts, we certainly like an equitable division of risk. The party that's better able to handle the risk should retain the risk. So, oftentimes in our contracts, we would see the geotechnical risk is held by the owner, and we can rely on the geotechnical studies that they've produced. And, quite often a common occurrence is geotechnical isn't in the field exactly what it was on the drawings. So that's typically an area where claims can arise. And again, this factual information of sharing things can help be upfront about, how that impacts the schedule and the costs and so on to run the project. So those are some things about, better projects, the good side of things versus the maybe the more tough side now. And certainly what we've seen over the years, and probably everywhere in the continent, has been project sizes have, ballooned massively. Oftentimes we're, I'm out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and in our market there are projects now. I think the biggest one is about $12 billion right now, and they range from 12 down to like $500 million. But there's so many of them out. It's very hard for everybody to understand, for one person or a small team to understand the nuances of all these projects. So how else can you do it but with, kind of factual data and models? It's very difficult otherwise.
Well, and I'll add a phrase to that, which we all understand and everybody knows and has heard this phrase ad nauseum, is the single source of truth, right? So whereas we look at that as such a valued thing, even internally from a contractor perspective, you know, Rick, you were talking about successful projects where you've gained this collaboration where you can establish that point with your client as a single source of truth. So everybody's looking at the same data to understand and represent, as Mike was saying, this is where we are with the schedule. Here's where we are with progressing. Here's where we are with the cost. Here's where, if everybody's looking even down to an RFI log or a submittal register, if we're all working to the same data and the same information, it's just, we've had so many success stories where it's so much more efficient, where for one, we're not reconciling differences between the two systems where I may show X and you show Y. Well, why is that and where is it wrong, and those kinds of things. But, you know, projects where we're able to, and it usually is more than design build or T&M type situation, but, you know, where we're able to get away from having to store that data and track that data separately, and just do it united together and agree that this is the data and it is adequately reflecting what's going on and correctly reflecting what's going on in the field. That is just a level of collaboration that's, I mean, it's just obvious the value that'll be there and the time it'll save.
So that's great. Some of the things that we've talked about are, and Kim, you brought this up, right? Setting expectations early, getting on the same page with the client. Mike, you brought up a lot of good stuff. I'm going to paraphrase it and not do you justice, but, you know, sort of the objectivity versus the subjectivity, right? If we can all agree these are the things we're going to track, the data sort of speaks for itself. Let's talk a little bit about maybe closing out a project. And for a contractor, the benefits of a successful closeout means they can start realizing the return, and they can get paid and they can move on to the next project. For owners, it's maybe a little different in that they do want to get on with that asset, whether it's an office building that they're looking to rent out, or maybe it's a facility that's going to produce something that they're going to be able to sell on the market. What are some of the challenges that you guys have run into when closing out a project, and how can connected data help during that really, really important phase of a project? Maybe Mike, we'll start with you there.
Sure. Yeah. You know, as many people on the line will know, you know, when we're doing closeout, typically years ago, it was a large set of drawings in the office with a red pen and a whole bunch of notations on it from various teams. Could be the surveying team and the technical team and so on. And of course, there's multiple sets of paper drawings laying around. But the idea now, with all this modeling information, it's captured as we go. It's not an afterthought. You know, oh my God, the handover's in 4 weeks. We better get on this and pull out all the records. It's more being done as the project is being built. So as designs shift, it's automatically coming through the model and coming out to be built. That is the record of what we've been building, because they're building everything from that model and those drawings that kind of come out of the model. You know, there's also been challenges, of course, with the handover. We see lots of jobs where there's training requirements. We have to train the clients on certain aspects or mechanical things with the project and so on. You know, those in the grand scheme of things, when we're talking a multi-billion-dollar job, they're relatively small value items. I would say for the clients, if they can be very prescriptive in the specs, if they want, you know, 5 classes for this certain scope and they're going to train 10 people and we have to do that, that's fine. The other way is to put in some flexibility in the contracts. You know, training classes for 10 people, let us put a price in for it, and you can have that. You can have as many as you like, but we'll keep issuing out the same information each time. So just a couple different alternates there for it.
Well, that's great. And it looks like the poll has completed some time ago. I'm not sure if everyone has access to the poll results or not, but it looks like we've spread ourselves out pretty evenly. We've got 21% of the attendees are contractors, 17% represent engineering firms. We've got coming in at 8% construction managers, owners, reps. 13% of our poll respondents represent the owner community. And of course, the largest bucket of them all is the other category that we don't have much visibility into, coming in at 42% of our poll respondents. So thank you for filling that out. And it does help us just kind of understand what sort of mix we've got in the audience. And I'd argue that we've got a really, really good mix across the contracting community, the engineering community, and the owner and owners reps community. And if you have an interesting other that you checked other and you want to share that, by all means, put it in the chat, and we'll keep an eye on that, and maybe we can steer the conversation that's something that's germane for one of those other categories, since it is our largest represented group here today. Kim, I'll put you on the spot a little bit. You've mentioned the importance of setting expectations, getting everyone on the same page. A cliche term that we always hear and banter about is, starting with the end in mind. But really, for owners to be successful long-term in the operations and maintenance of a facility, contractors may be more focused on the short term, getting paid and moving to the next project. How do you sort of navigate this difference in perspective and ensure this isn't happening on your projects? Having a disconnect between, the desire to finish up the project on one hand, and hey, we're looking at this as a long-term asset that we're going to get revenue from another perspective. How do you sort of balance that?
Well, I'll be honest with you, Rick. From a technology perspective, you simply cannot do that. So as we were talking about managing expectations and always having to look ahead, the main way that we can be successful from a digital perspective is to make sure that we always understand that there are going to be other expectations and there are going to be other objectives as we grow and as whatever the process and the systems are growing. And if I put my owner's hat on in this, and as you know, this is like one of my favorite topics, but how do we continue to bring value and maximize the return on investment on everything that an owner does with regard to technology? And I view it as my job from a contractor's perspective to make sure that we answer those questions. Well, first of all, ask those questions and answer those questions and understand that. Because things like a BIM model, guys, BIM models are not just for design anymore. For that matter, they're not just for construction anymore. So if we truly want to bring value to that investment and your investment as an owner, what I'm going to be able to do is feed you the data, capture the right data, and organize that data such that when you get to that maintenance phase and you get to that O&M phase, you've got this great as-built, intelligent asset from which you manage your facility going forward and do the maintenance and execute maintenance and continue to connect data to it to feed it and bring it to life. So from a contracting perspective, I may have a single scope of work, but when I'm looking at and thinking about data, it is my job to work with you as a customer to understand what the value of those data are and what the potential for that asset really is, even going forward. So I want to go back to Mike, what Mike said about closeout. So, it's the same concept here, digitizing what we're doing. So while we're building or while we're executing whatever scope of work it is, where we're actually closing it out as we go. And I want to throw out a number there because we've had a couple of projects where, it was estimated or put on the table from a metric perspective that we saved 70% on closeout time or level of effort just by digitization. And so I'll throw in there too that from an owner perspective, if you guys will work with us on the potential for change there and look at and ask questions around some of legacy requirements around paper and wet signatures and, what are the possibilities? Even if the answer comes back to where you are today, it's worth the pause, it's worth the time to sit down and say, why do we need this? Do we really need this? Is there another way to accomplish that? So I guess that's my answer there, is that we're always looking for the better way and that we're always looking for that more innovative way. And I view that as our scope in any scope in any type of job.
Go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
Very, Rick. Yeah, just to expand on Kim's comment there, because what we find doing these large construction projects is as we approach the end, we might be a year and a half, a year to go. And typically what happens is people start to exit, maybe not on the joint ventures schedule. They just leave because they're looking for more employment somewhere else on a fresher project. So when those types of people leave, some of the knowledge goes with them. And, that just impresses upon us that we need to get the handover documents done as we go, not leaving it till the end when it's just a scramble, because that happens on every single job we do. We see people leaving early. So to get ahead of it and have the owners, kind of require that or kind of get on board with the IDD BIM modeling is a better process. In the long term, it'll be much, much simpler.
So let me take that point, Mike, and expand on it a little bit, because I think this is really important for people to hear. I've got the benefit today of having two, what I'll call really, let's just say industry luminaries, right? You're both vice presidents with organizations. You both bring a tremendous amount of skill and knowledge and experience to the table. Obviously, we can't put a Kim Arendt and a Mike Albany on every project. We just can't scale that way. So how has technology allowed you to and again, at the risk of sounding cliche, how has it enabled you to bring that skill and expertise and really do more with less? We can't put a Kim and a Mike on every single project, but how has technology enabled you to leverage your experience and your skills to end up with better projects without having to do everything yourself? Maybe Kim, we'll start with you there.
Well, I mean, the magic for us is this approach with what we call our technology toolkits, right? So depending on what job we're going to the field to do or what scope we're going to execute, we have a technology toolbox, just like you would have a physical toolbox. And it drives not only practice in how we work, but then the practice of how we collect data and what systems support that work. And so the things that I'm telling you right now and the things that I'm representing and the concepts and the objectives are reflected in that toolkit. And so it just becomes, honestly, Rick, it just becomes, the way we work. Now, are we 100% there yet? No, but I can tell you that's where we're driving to. And I can tell you that if you adopt that approach and get it out of this project by project, guys, that's where the inertia comes, right? That's when we open these things and we look at these things, opportunity by opportunity and RFP by RFP. And when we try to solve problems one-off on a project by project basis, that's where you get that disparity, Rick, where you don't have that consistency, and it's very difficult. You tend to have pockets of knowledge and pockets of capability, but if we merge all that into an understanding of not only this is how we work from a practice perspective, but here is my toolbox or my toolkit of systems and technology approach and document management and data management approaches that we will use for every time we go to the field to do that kind of work. That's when you're able to make that operational consistently.
Yeah, and I'm hearing, and you just said it there, operational consistency. I was thinking operational discipline, right? Every project has got the same toolkit.
Takes that too. Mm-hmm.
Mike, are you experiencing the same results as you're leveraging technology more and more? Are you less reliant on the heroes, and do you feel that your everyday staff is enabled by use of technology?
Somewhat. I mean, we're still got a long way to go. It's a long path. We've been using technology for many years, but the people side of things is always a challenge. Working with them and getting them up to speed and educated and skilled in the business. Construction is a bit of a different animal. If you're going to school to be a lawyer or doctor, you kind of get trained in your specialty, but when you're on estimating or scheduling, there's a lot more to that to understand what all these things are that you're dealing with day to day. So certainly the education is a big piece, but where we see the systems coming into play largely is to try and speed that process up. Seeing the same things, when I first got in the business, I learned by seeing and doing over and over again. So you do something, 3, 4, 5, 6 times, you kind of get good at it at the end time, and you can repeat that process. So processes are key. But in all honesty, most people hate the word processes and they don't like to follow a process document. So that
Amen,
is a
brother.
challenge in itself. But people like to play around in computers. They think it's cool. They like the bid that way. They like P6 that way and cash flow. And, so if you can create documents that are kind of templates that they work from and start using those, that's the biggest advantage. We certainly have seen the project-based mentality. Project A is completely different than Project B in the way it's prepared and executed, maybe, but it's the same 2 projects at its core. It's a lot easier to handle things when people are using common processes and templates, because that gives you the ability to tweak and to modify. When you don't have a standard to go modify, everything's from scratch. It's really a haphazard effort, and you kind of get out of it the scramble that you put into it. So, that's our main focus, is trying to get everybody aligned on the same page. And maybe if I can, Rick, I'll just talk a minute about the data itself. So, we've gone through as an organization 3 different techniques on handling data, and the first 2 times we're not good. So, for those on the call, an organization may choose to say, okay, we're gonna bid this job and we're gonna schedule it the way we bid it, and that's it. 1 bar in the schedule is 1 bar in the estimate, but the estimate drives it. We've been there, done that, it just doesn't work. Then we tried reversing it. The schedule drove the estimate. That doesn't work, because then you got cost control and they don't want to have 50,000 lines in the budget. So kind of the magic bullet that we send through all this, as Kim has alluded to and spoke of, really, the data has properties, and all these properties allows it to speak to the guys in the other side of the office, whether it's the scheduling guys, the cash guys, the estimating guys, whatever it is. So any piece of data has properties that are shared between those teams, and they choose to roll it up however they want. And that's really the real magic of it now. We've been involved in that type of a roll up for a relatively short amount of time, but it seems to be most satisfying to all of the teams. The estimating, takeoff, scheduling, cash flow, cost control, everything we're trying to do to get these projects built, we're sharing the same data, but in our own kind of different way. But we do have kickoff meetings and weekly meetings with all of these people to make sure that we can all stay aligned. That's really the key, is getting the people that are rolling up their shirt sleeves on all this to get them to talk and get them to share, because right out of the gate, they don't really understand what we're doing, because this is new. This is a spaceship that landed in the office, and they don't know what to, they're aliens walking off, and they don't know how to talk to all these people because they come from a different side of the universe to them.
It's interesting. You did bring up, summarization of data. People can interrogate and review the data at really whatever level makes the most sense for them. I do not have an accordion laying around here, but I've heard some of our customers refer to that concept as sort of an accordion, right? You can compress the data, you can roll it up, summarize it, and then you can pull it back out, and maybe pull it back out in a different level of detail than how it was originally, input or created.
For sure, I like
I'm
that.
Relying on my imaginary accordion in here.
Yeah, that's good, man. I like that. It's better than the spaceship.
I like the spaceship too. I don't know if I've got one of those laying around here or not, but
it is that universal language. And I'll take this opportunity to mention something that you mentioned to us, I think it was yesterday, Mike, around, this is where we can, ask that because it is so important that we establish these standards and this standardization of data and practice, and find these common ways that, you know, this common language of from which we all speak, because like you said, at the end of the day, at some level, we're working the same workflow and we all have the same objectives, is that I would ask that we, you know, even from a contractor perspective and from an owner perspective, and a management of expectations and requirements, you know, the more you allow us to stay within that standard way of practice that we do things and that we've established at a, you know, the more efficient and effective that we will be. So, you know, dropping in differences or changes or, you know, requirements, I would ask that we ask ourselves, how necessary is that change? You know, how impactful is it? Like, you know, if it's something that drives your own systems, and, you know, certainly we have the conversation and we figure out how we do that, but it could be a translation back into, you know, that system. But so what I'm saying is, let's minimize the variables, and the more we can stay within our standards, the better. It
We've
just
both
slows
done
us down.
an outstanding job of helping us understand some of the challenges you were facing. I think you've both said in as many words, there's still work to be done. Let's fast forward and maybe talk a little bit about the future state. What, Kim, in your perspective, what does the future look like for owners and contractors and their ability to leverage the same data and benefit from it?
Well, I'm excited because I think technology is, I hate to say this way and be cliche, but the sky's the limit, right? It's more about on a human level, how well can we work together, I think, than it is the technology and the capabilities, because the capabilities are there. You know, our opportunities are amazing. So whether it's, you know, through something as simple as a dashboard, you know, looking at project health and metrics, or if it's a digital, living, breathing digital twin with the visualization of data and looking at spatial context and, you know, representation of a facility and all the data related to that facility and all those data changing as things are happening. You know, Rick, the sky, you know, the opportunities are just amazing. We as, you know, mentally have to keep up, and we have to change our behaviors around which to be able to support those opportunities.
So opportunities abound. We listen to Kim, the ultimate optimist there, that's telling us the future is bright and rosy. If we
have to get out of our own way. That's what I believe.
and along those lines, Mike, what do you think some of the obstacles are? What do you think some of the challenges are, and maybe some ideas on how to mitigate or remove some of those roadblocks?
Well, I think the big obstacle on the major project side is certainly the claims, right? That's kind of the elephant in the room. The owners don't like extra unexpected costs, and the contractors don't like paying for it, and neither does the engineering firm, because they've got to design it all. So unforeseen things that come up is certainly probably the biggest issue in my mind. Okay, related to cost. So trying to get the information across to everybody, I think, is key. You know, like I've said before, the jobs are so much bigger. Their magnitude's bigger here, billions of dollars. You know, we got to get the right people on the jobs, in the rooms, dealing with the right data, and we have to enable those people to make decisions. You know, trying to, you know, we have the contractors a bit like the monkey in the middle, sometimes, depending on the project, but we've got to get the owners into the room and get them to understand what the issues are. And, you know, kind of the way to do that is to share with them the actual data on the projects. I think that's probably one of the biggest issues that we can try and work to. The other thing that may be, and we see it being tossed around, experimented with in Canada over the last few years, and even now coming up in a bigger way, is different contract models. So, you know, one contract model, it was called CMGC, or some alternative like that. It's construction manager, general contractor. So the owners don't like to pay claims. The risk is high on the contractor side. What they do for some of these types of projects is the owner calls a design firm and they pre-qualify a contractor to come in the arena with them for about a year, depending on the project size. And it's basically an open book process. It was competitive to begin with to get in the room. Open book for the year, you design it, you bid the different iterations of design, you come out to about a 90% level or so, and then the contractor gets a chance to provide a lump sum price at that point in time. What we've seen the owners specify, if the owner doesn't agree with the pricing that comes in, then the owner retains the right to go out to market with that 90% design, and that's all retained by the client, not the design firm, not the contractor. So that's an interesting model. It certainly reduces the risk. It probably makes it more realistic expectations on the owner's side. And certainly they'll be aware, because in these types of projects, they're locked in the room for the year as well. So different contracts, types, and open to that, to experiment with them is probably a good solution as well.
Interesting. Yeah, and we've seen all kinds of alternative project delivery models over the years, especially recently, right, with integrated project design and things like that. Well, that's great. That's great. We'll open it up to the audience for any Q&A. And again, we appreciate the responses to the poll and everyone's attendance today. See if we can massage some participation out of our audience members. And if not, what we'd like to do is we'd like to thank our friends at CURT for hosting this event. Be sure to check out www.curtevents.com for more CURT events, including the November summit and the February conference. My understanding is both of these are going to be in person. So that's great. Give everyone an opportunity to get back out there and put some faces with some names. By all means, feel free to stop by our website, www.innate.com, to learn more about our products and services. And we appreciate everyone spending the better part of the hour with us. And I certainly would like to thank Kim and Mike for their participation as well today.